I think everyone's familiar with what happened with GameStop. Is that to explain to people quickly, Dylan, how shorting stocks works?
I mean, it's simply a bet that the price of a stock is going to go down.
And so
that's the sentiment. The mechanics of it are that you have to borrow it's like you have to borrow it and then buy it back, meaning that if I sell a stock at $1 short, I then have to at some point buy that stock back. If the stock price goes up, then I have to pay the difference between the dollar. Let's say I've got to buy it back at $5, so I lose $4. If it goes to 50 cents, I buy it back for 50 cents and I make 50 cents.
So if you buy a stock, what shorting is you're actually borrowing the stock, and the thought is it's going to go down in value, so I'll be able to buy it at half the price and then give it back to the guy I borrowed it from, and look at all the money I made. So that's called shorting a stock. So that's what they were doing to GameStop. They were shorting it, and then a bunch of
which, by the way, not a bad idea. Again, the world has moved away from brick and mortar. GameStop is heavily involved in brick and mortar. The world has moved to streaming. So there was a case to be made that a big brick and mortar, think of it like shorting Blockbuster while you're expecting Netflix. I'm not specifically advocating or justifying the position, but I'm saying it's not just people short stocks that they believe have less value. And so there's an integrity in the analysis of some of these positions, whether you like it or not.
And so a bunch of people on Reddit figured out that these people were way over shorting GameStop, right? Like 80%.
Right. Basically, the GameStop. Yeah, you've got let me give you two things. All right, I'll let you go. I'm sorry. I'll listen.
No, go ahead.
No, well, I mean, you have a couple dynamics. One, you have the dynamic you're talking about, which is the ability to express a negative belief or a negative sentiment on a publicly traded company, which you just described, shorting. The basis for the negative opinion in GameStop has to do with its heavy investment in brick and mortar and the malls and sort of its legacy business as a Blockbuster as opposed to a Netflix. Now, maybe they make the transition. That's a whole company debate that's really irrelevant at this point to what's happened, because GameStop has really taken on a totally different meaning. Which we'll obviously, I'm sure we'll get into. But so that dynamic exists. At the same time, you have all of these brokers starting back in the day with E-Trade and Schwab and Ameritrade. And then you have Tastyworks, where I've been doing this podcast and working with those folks. And then you have the biggest one, which is Robinhood, which is the one everybody's talking about. All of these companies have invested in making investing in the stock market more accessible, easier to do, easier for smaller people to play in. And part of what happened was with Robinhood, it probably was the most successful at creating. The problem with these trading platforms, Jimmy, is when you get inside of them, they tend to intimidate people because they look like the dashboard of a 747. And so you're like, I don't know, I'm not going to get this. Is crazy. Robinhood did a great job creating a user interface that is very simple, very easy to interact with. And so they were the most successful at enrolling the largest group of small investors. And it was inside of that group of small investors that the discussion came to be that, hang on, this GameStop is heavily shorted, and we actually love video games, and we love GameStop, and we don't think it's going to lose its value. We actually think it's going to gain value. And so that's sort of where the broader, we'll call the fundamental opinions that started a fire that now is much more of a political event. I mean, we're now, so I'm assuming we'll get into where we are today.
Yes. We've
transcended but the foundation of this is the mechanics of negative sentiment from Wall Street on the company and the mechanics of positive sentiment from the retail investors on Robinhood primarily.
So when the people on the Robinhood app started to purchase GameStop, it screwed up the hedge fund that was heavily into shorting GameStop. It screwed because instead of their stock price going down, it started skyrocketing. And so that's going to bankrupt that hedge fund, right? Because now they're going to lose all that. So they made a bet that the stock of GameStop would go down. It went astronomically up. And now they're going to go bankrupt. So what did they do? Well, here's what they did. That they halted buying of GameStop and other hot stocks, which I don't know if that's illegal, but I certainly should be. And here, Josh Billinson says, looks like Robinhood just stopped supporting GameStop, AMC, BlackBerry, and Nokia. Users can close out positions, but they can't buy more. So Robinhood contracts with Wall Street heavies to fill these trades. I would guess somebody big made some calls yesterday. So So how did? So
Well,
let
let me just talk about
go ahead.
halting stocks in general, Jimmy, from a legal standpoint.
Okay.
The only organization that has the authority to halt trading in a stock or basically ban people from buying or selling a stock, and it's ridiculous. The idea of banning one side and not the other side is beyond catastrophic betrayal of. I mean, Robinhood should be shut down. Full stop. Okay, but I'll get to that. The only reason you halt a stock is it gets halted by the exchange itself. That's either the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ. The only reason to halt a stock is if there's explicit evidence of fraud. Think about WorldCom, Enron, names like that. Or if there's a significant material economic event that has not been disclosed but has been leaked in some sort of insider way that's distorting the market. But absent fraud or a material leak, the exchanges will never halt a stock because the integrity of American financial markets is in the accessibility, reliability, depth, and liquidity, which is what makes what Robinhood did yesterday a catastrophic betrayal that should put them out of business, in my opinion.
So do you think it was illegal for? So you're saying basically the only legal people who can shut down a trade
is the exchange.
Is the exchange themselves, and here that they just did it, and that's got to be illegal, right?
Well, again, I'm not a lawyer, so I won't say from illegal. There's a class action lawsuit that was appropriately filed by the Robinhood customers, seeking to hold Robinhood liable for their arbitrary decision to cease buying in GameStop and these other names, but only allow selling. Now, it may be at the prerogative of any given broker as a private company to allow the buying and selling of any given securities. But in the history of Wall Street, any broker that would dare to do that would be put out of business. The idea of a broker is to facilitate access to the exchange to buy and sell stocks. A broker has no place and no authority to decide what stocks should be bought or sold, and certainly to deny access, let alone to deny access where you're allowed to sell it, but you're not allowed to buy it, which is now an explicit manipulation to force the price lower. And whether they did it on purpose or not, the optics are that Robinhood banned the buying of the stock explicitly to help bail out the hedge fund. That's what it looks like.
And it keeps going. So Robinhood, other brokers restrict trading on GameStop and AMC. So you could see how it was trading crazy. It's really going off. So here's a NASDAQ CEO suggests a halt to trading to allow investors to recalibrate their positions after a GameStop surge. So that was the CEO of NASDAQ said that they should halt trading to allow investors to recalibrate their positions. That sounds like bullshit to me.
Well, again, this is a stock that's traded on the New York Stock Exchange. The only legal authority to control the trading of this stock is the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange, and the basis upon which the New York Stock Exchange has the authority to halt trading is in the face of material news that needs to be properly disseminated that may affect the value of the stock to allow proper dissemination so that you don't have insider trading or some sort of obvious aspect of fraud. Now, when you have a huge price change like this, it does create more risk for people, which then should be played out in things like increasing the margin requirement, which is the amount of money that you actually have to put in your account in order to own the stock. And it would be totally appropriate to say to everybody, if you want to buy or sell these stocks, you need to increase the amount of money in your account because the volatility is higher. That's standard practices across the entire financial industry. They did not come out and say, oh, you should increase. So if I'm Robinhood, they should either come out and say, increase the margin requirements if you want to play. This is a big boy game. This is now a big boy number. You got to put in big boy money. If you're not going to put in big boy money, then you can't play. That's a very reasonable thing. It happens all the time. That's option one. They didn't do that. Option number two, call the chairman of the New York Stock Exchange and say you're concerned about fraud or a material information event and request that the New York Stock Exchange halt the stock pending clarification on news and fraud. They also did not do that. Those are the only two reasonable options that a brokerage has in a situation like this. Instead, they arbitrarily banned people from buying the stock while allowing them to sell the stock, which caused the stock to go down 50%. Making matters worse, the hedge fund that was bankrupted by the short position was then bailed out by Robinhood's biggest customer, which only makes the optics look worse because now you say, hang on, is Robinhood working on behalf of their biggest customer to allow their biggest customer to get out of this short position now that their biggest customer has taken over the hedge fund? So the hedge fund that was short did go bankrupt, basically, but instead of filing for bankruptcy, they had to bring in an outside investor to bail them out. The outside investor that bailed them out is also the biggest customer at Robinhood.
Okay.
So now Robinhood stops trading after the biggest customer takes over the hedge fund. And, so let me just take you to the end of the rainbow, because it really gets fabulously awful. So instead of doing what they should have done, which is raise margins and call the head of the New York Stock Exchange, they banned buying after their biggest customer took a position in the hedge fund that had been bailed out. And then making matters that much more entertaining and controversial and, of course, disgusting. No one, you know who the biggest payer of speaking fees to Janet Yellen, the new Treasury Secretary, is?
I'm going to guess that hedge fund?
The
Citadel?
The company that took over the bankrupt hedge fund.
Yeah.
Making matters even more interesting. So now you've got the Treasury Secretary who's been asked as of right now, it's actually happening right now as we're talking, at 11 a.m. Eastern today, I mixed up my time zones, 3 hours ago, 11 a.m. Pacific out there. So it's 11 a.m. 3 hours ago in D.C. Janet Yellen was asked to brief the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States as to what is going on with this entire controversy and this entire situation. So you have a woman who was paid almost $1 million by Citadel, who is now theoretically supposed to be the Treasury Secretary, objectively briefing the President and the Vice President, when Citadel now stands to be the biggest beneficiary of Robinhood's egregious behavior.
So that's so now the fear of a normal person in America is, I don't think the president and vice president are getting accurate briefings from someone named Janet Yellen, because it's obvious she's compromised. If $800,000 doesn't compromise you, what does?
Well, the other thing is, and I think Matt Stoller has made this point and others, these speaking fees are not for speaking.
That's right.
I mean, the speech isn't that good, I hate to tell you. Whether it's Hillary Clinton or whether it is Janet Yellen, these speaking fees are a payment for access and influence in the future, whether people want to believe it or not.
So it's crony capitalism that's happening right there. That's corruption of government. That's corporate capture of our government. And so I just want to show you this, because this made a big. I'll just show you a few seconds of this. Dave Portnoy, who I'd never heard of before, gave this Twitter speech, and people are talking about it. Let's listen.
Okay, emergency press conference time. Maybe the craziest one I've ever done. And I've been ranting and raving all day. But what is going on Wall Street? The way they have absolutely cheated, stolen, robbed everyday people who have been investing with Robinhood and other E-Trade accounts and all this stuff by saying, hey, hedge funds are getting smoked. Billionaires are getting smoked. So we're no longer going to let you trade on certain stocks, GMC, AMC, NOC. We're just shutting it off. You can't buy those stocks anymore. You can only sell them. We are going to crash those stocks so all our hedge fund billionaire friends can get out and not get killed. It is one of the most remarkable, illegal, shocking robberies in the history, in plain sight. In plain sight. No closed door meetings, nothing behind. Just right in your face, putting a gun in your mouth and saying, give us all your money. That is what Robinhood, crooks, jail, the Citadel, Ken Griffin, jail, Steve Cohen, the Mets owner, jail, are doing.
So should they be in jail? Here's what Steve Cohen said. He says no, he had zero to do with what happened. He said the investment is his right to invest in something to the best of his. So I mean,
here's the issue. Everything that happened, the short position by the hedge fund. So the short position by the hedge fund, totally legal, totally justifiable, and honestly, negatives. There's a lot of fraud, and people who own stocks and people who run these companies have a lot of incentive to make their stock price go up and to misrepresent the value of their company. Having short sellers who call bullshit on some of those companies is actually a very valuable thing to have, because it's a check on the natural incentive for the CEOs of publicly traded companies to overinflate their value. It's inherently not a bad thing.
Oh.
So the short selling is totally legal by Melvin, by Stevie Cohen, by anybody. Totally fine. The Robinhood buying frenzy by those who disagree with the short sellers, because they believe in the company, because they believe there's a future. Absolutely legal, absolutely fabulous. That a market is made based on a difference of opinion, and the price of a given stock is ultimately the result of the settling of that opinion. If more people believe that it has value, then it's their prerogative to do that. If more people don't believe it has value, it's their prerogative to do that. And then what happens over time, the company either makes money and validates those who raise the stock price, or the company does not make money and it validates those who bet on the stock going lower. So that takes 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years to play out. But in the short term, you can have all these sort of big swings in the prices. But ultimately, whether you believe in the company or you don't believe in the company, both of those positions, absolutely reasonable, absolutely rational, absolutely valuable. It is the basis upon which American markets are built and made. What Robinhood did was step into the deepest, most highly respected, highest integrity, most important capital market on the planet. It is the single biggest source of financing for every business on the planet Earth. The thing, maybe the greatest asset the United States has economically, is the deepest, most trusted, most liquid capital markets in the world. Whether you want to raise money for a media company, whether you want to do a biotech company, whether you're a video game company, that is the foundation. The trust in that system is the foundation of the American economy. That is why it is so rare for the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ to halt a stock. It's why when they do halt a stock, they halt both buying and selling, and they only halt it for purposes of an emergency need to disseminate material information or extreme evidence of fraud. What Robinhood did was they stepped in and deliberately banned the buying of a stock while allowing it to be sold, in a complete betrayal of the integrity of the U.S. capital markets. And that should, at the very least, put them out of business forever. Again, I don't know whether it is illegal, but Robinhood should no longer exist as a business ever again. You cannot have brokers in the marketplace taking, basically, Robinhood took a position. They said, we're short. Robinhood, by their position, said, we're short GameStop. We're going to encourage selling of the stock, and we're going to ban buying of the stock. That's why Dave Portnoy was so outraged. And so what you're looking at here is not just a betrayal of the Robinhood user base, or a betrayal of the people that want to be involved in GameStop. You have somebody who has come in and placed the same way that I won't even make the comparison. The compromising of the integrity of the U.S. capital markets is the foundation of the American economy. And any institution that compromises that integrity, whether it's going back to the financial crisis, which is where a lot of this starts, because of the bailouts, which was another compromising of the integrity of the financial system because it's too big to fail, or whether it's because of an individual broker stepping into the marketplace to ban one side of a transaction or another, needs to be eliminated from business.
So let's get into more of this. So that guy Cohen was already, in 2013, Steve Cohen founded SAC Capital. Advisors pled guilty to insider trading and agreed to pay $1.8 billion in fines. He
made a lot more than that.
In one of the biggest criminal cases against a hedge fund. Cohen was prohibited from managing outside money for 2 years as part of the settlement reached in the civil case over his accountability scandal. And in January 2021, Cohen's hedge fund, Point72, joined Ken Griffin's Citadel and put $2.75 billion into Melvin Capital as a result of the GameStop. So Melvin Capital was...
So they bailed up. Melvin Capital is the hedge fund that got blown up by the Robinhood people. And then Citadel and Steve Cohen were the ones that bailed out Melvin Capital instead of having Melvin Capital go bankrupt.
Right. And so... But the point is, so now by definition, Steve Cohen and Citadel are now invested in
GameStop going lower because now they own the position as opposed to Melvin Capital.
Right. And so Keith Olbermann jumped in and told he told Steve Cohen to ignore Portnoy. He says, you're arguing with the lunatic. Just do what everybody else does and block him. And so here comes Keith Olbermann to check notes, defend a market manipulating billionaire previously convicted of insider trading. So that's
I don't know where that's even coming from. I don't know what he was thinking with that.
I don't know what he was thinking with that either, but I don't know what he was thinking about with this either.
We are at war with Russia, or perhaps more correctly, we have lost a war with Russia without a battle. We are no longer a sovereign nation. We are no longer a democracy. We are no longer a free people. We are the victims of a bloodless coup. So far, a bloodless coup engineered by Russia, which if we did it to another country would be described as an act of war. And in this country, we have conceded defeat. The nation and all of our freedoms hang by a thread, and the military apparatus of this country is about to be handed over to scum who are beholden to scum, Russian scum. As things are today, January 20th.
Okay, so he lost his mind a couple of years ago, I think in 2016. So that's why Keith Olbermann was trending all day yesterday, negatively. So here I want to show you. Can you just put any other ethnicity in there? Just put Spanish scum or Israeli scum or Jewish scum or you couldn't do that with any other country. You couldn't do that with any other Mexican.
I think my theory is because Keith was the sports commentator for the 1980 Olympics, where that hockey game happened with the Russians in 1980, that he still thinks that it were in some sort of that he's unaware that 40 years have passed. And that there's a saying. One quick comment on the whole Russia-U.S. thing. There's a saying that people in New York and San Francisco like to talk about how much they hate Los Angeles, but people in Los Angeles never even think about or talk about New York or San Francisco, so they don't even know what you're talking about.
That's true.
Well, the same goes for Russia. Russia is a country that is running itself, right? I mean, the Russians are not spending their time thinking about America. The same way, it is a distortion of a convenient villain that was the whole Russia thing, in my opinion, was an invention of Hillary Clinton to cover up for the embarrassment of the exposure for the fact that she rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders. That was exposed in those leaks. They did not want to deal with the fact that Hillary Clinton and Debbie Wasserman Schultz were obviously exposed for rigging the primary against Bernie Sanders. And so instead of addressing the content of the leak, which exposed that, they created this false villain in Russia. It's very simple and economically profitable for a certain percentage of our
the media. The media then ran a grift on Trump, Russia hate, and outrage porn for 4 straight. They're still doing it. It's still not over, by the way. So I just showed you they're still blaming Russia for stuff. Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.